Hi, it's Professor Murray. Today I want to talk to you about the senior project that you're going to work on in the next semester, or I guess whenever you sign up for it. Typically, people do it in the following semester. Let's have a look at what we're going to do. For the senior project, we want all the students working together on a real-world problem or opportunity. Normally, the students will all work in teams. The size of the team depends on what the project is. Typically, 2 or 3 people at the minimum, and not more than 4 people at the most. To do the project, the first step is the sponsor is going to come up with a project charter. You'll be given the charter as your starting point. You'll need to evaluate the situation and get a good definition of what's going on or what the problem is. Identify some opportunities to improve the situation, fix the problem, or whatever is appropriate. Explore different options, identify the risks of each of those options, and then eventually make some recommendation and action plan. At the end of your project, you're going to produce 2 things. One is a written report, and that's going to have to be a very professional looking report. You're also going to do a presentation, just kind of like the one I'm doing right now. You have to present your entire project so that the industrial partner has the option of either reading your report or of watching your presentation. Some examples of what we've done in the past. We've done control system modernization, warehouse automation, training center layout, alarm monitoring automation, and HMI interface for an existing control system. Here's what we expect of the industrial partner. First, they're going to explain the project, and they do that through a project charter form. They're going to facilitate your access to information, possibly to the worksite. It's not always going to be a physical access, but in some cases it might be. They're going to review and comment on your reports and your presentations, and hopefully they're going to provide some mentoring for you. Here's an example of the project charter form. It's used differently for each project. Different projects have different amounts of information, but basically we're trying to capture, we've got our project description or the title of the project, the objectives, what are we trying to accomplish, what the customer requirements are, and you'll notice these two are kind of similar, so different people fill this out differently. A description of the current situation, improvement measurables. So how are we going to know if we've made some improvements? Dates, whatever dates are appropriate. For example, if you're graduating in the spring, then you don't want to be working on this project after graduation. The project director, maybe that's the project sponsor. Team leader, team members, boundaries. Boundaries are important in a project because some projects can kind of spin out of control. It's called scope creep. We want to keep the projects nicely defined and packaged so that we can get our objectives accomplished. All right, so that's the project charter form. Now let's look at some components of a SMART project. SMART is an acronym that you'll probably hear many times in your careers. The S is for specific. So we don't want anything general, we want something very specific. M is measurable. We need to know if we have made an improvement, and we need to have a way of measuring that improvement. Achievable is very important. We don't want to have any fixing world hunger type of projects. We want something that can actually be achieved. Realistic expectations. So those two are kind of similar, but it's necessary to get the right words for the SMART acronym. And timely. So timely means a few things. One is it needs to be something that's currently an issue. So that's part of timely. And the other is it has to be something that can be accomplished within the time frame that we set out. And then I added the I at the end. It needs to be something interesting, something that can generate some excitement. Now, projects sometimes fail, and there's a number of things that lead to a failed project. And you might notice here I've done an Ishikawa diagram. We've got scope, access, method, time, resources, and quality. One of the biggest problems we run into is the access problem. Either the people are not available, or the people from the company, that is, or the data is not available, or access to. That's where projects often get hung up. Ensuring a successful project. To do that, we set up project gateways. And those are activities between the instructor and the student. The way the gateways work is we need to make sure that we accomplish a number of certain things before we move on to the next phase of the project. It keeps us kind of focused. The other is we have our project charter, and that's for the industrial partner to really list out what the situation is, what they expect, and how we're going to know if we are successful or not. These are the project gateways. First is the charter. You notice the green stars on the side. Those are activities where the project sponsor gets involved. We start with the project charter. One of the very first things you're going to do is an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. And that's for a few reasons. First off, it's to protect the customer, that we don't take their information and share it somewhere with some other organization. It's to have the customer acknowledge that we need access to certain information that's proprietary to their organization. In that regard, it protects our project. And it's also a very common type of document that you'll see in industry. Whenever two different organizations collaborate on something, they typically do an NDA agreement. We move on to do our preliminary analysis. Midway through the project, you're going to do a midway report, and we'll be in contact with the project sponsor at that point to show them what we're doing, how we've done, any problems we've run into. We do a draft report near the end, and that's to get us, the instructor and the students, all on the same page with here's how we're going to conclude the project. And then finally we do our final report and our final presentation. Then I've got some more details on these slides. You can read through these slides. I'll post them on Canvas for you. I've got details on the charter, the preliminary analysis, the midway point, the draft, and the final project. This will give you some idea of what is done at each one of those gateways. That's the overview of the project. Now, to prepare, there's a few things that you can be doing now. One is you can be thinking about who you're going to want to work with. I assign the teams, but I take your input as to what project you want to work on and who you want to work with. I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to assign them that way, but I listen to your input and then I make my decision on who gets assigned to which project. Second is think about some ideas for projects. What kind of project would you like to work on? What are your ideas for a project? And let's start communicating those. That's all for now. It's going to be pretty exciting. We're going to use the project management tools that we're learning this semester, and we're going to apply those with our senior project. Okay, thanks for listening.